Everyone, welcome to another episode of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins. With me tonight, Billy Beeman. What's up, buddy?
Not much, man. Excited for tonight. Hope everybody's ready to hop on the tight end train. We haven't talked much about them this cycle for the prospect profiles, but we're gonna get into them pretty fast and furious tonight with the top four pretty much, and some dynasty trades later. Some pretty interesting stuff. So I'm excited for it. How you doing though?
Cool. Let's hit some news and nonsense real quick. So it's not official technically because it's not technically legal. But Deebo Samuel is going to be heading to the Washington Commanders. And let's see, Jets released Devontae Adams. Those are kind of the two big ones. Jamal Williams was also let go from the Saints.
Yeah, very impactul there. Is it really? I'm ready. I'm ready to jump on the tight ends train. Yeah. All right, let's do it, Jake. Yeah, I mean the Deebo one, is that during the legal tampering period? Is that what they call that?
No, it's not even opened up yet. I don't think
it's not. That's crazy. That's crazy. What's the point of all these? Just let these guys just sign contracts. What the hell is going on? But the Deebo one, I like that. Love him going to Washington. We were talking in some of our league chats about whether it's his value is increasing from this move, and I kind of think it is. I just think less target competition than with the 49ers. And really, I mean, I said potentially when I said this wherever we were talking about it, but it is a QB upgrade, right? So I mean, I think from all accounts it's probably a better place for Deebo to be late in his career for us to get the most value out of him from a dynasty perspective. But this is a great opportunity to get out of him. We always talk about that. It's a good window. I think him being sent over to Washington just kind of gives him that bump. So I like that move. The Devontae Adams one is kind of, it's whatever. He'll end up with a team somewhere and he'll be fine. I'm not really concerned about Devontae Adams or, out try. I mean, this might be a good time to go get him if people are down on him, but I doubt that's really a thing.
Yeah, I agree with you with the whole Washington thing. Like just the competition, like instead of being like CMC, Kittle, and another good wide receiver in Ayuk, like all he really has to compete with now is just Ben Sinnott and T-Mac and I don't know, the ghost of Eckler. So at the very least, Deebo didn't lose any value. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not like he ended up on the Giants. So
yeah, this is probably as good as it could get from a trade perspective for him. And Joe says, isn't Deebo just a trade rather than tampering? Yeah, I guess that would not impact things from that regard. So yeah, good point.
Yeah, I don't know all the rules. All right, let's talk about rookie pick value since
an agent.
We're getting there. That would have been a cool job though. So question is, will late first round rookie picks increase in value the closer we get to the draft, or will things already declare themselves for the later picks? In summary, do only early picks gain value closer to rookie drafts, or will late picks increase in value too? So I've thought about this, and I honestly think that after going through, us degens watching the combine and getting hyped up, especially with this running back class, that we've been deprived of a strong running back class for 5 years, 6 years. It's been a while. And this one, it just seems like there's a lot of dudes that just go and honestly take over jobs in the league right now. There's probably 7 running backs right now that are, I think, could easily be 1As on multiple teams in the NFL right now. So for me, I think it feels like the early first round rookie picks, they're going to increase in value a little bit. Just I think that's just kind of inherent to how it goes. The closer you get to the rookie draft, there's going to be a little bit of value bump. But I do honestly just think with the class that we're going to see early seconds, mid seconds, or even your 208, 209. I think those are actually going to have more value now, because I think that maybe collectively us as a community are starting to see that this might be a little deeper than we thought, even though the quarterbacks are really holding us back.
Yeah, if the quarterbacks were deeper, this would be a much better class. It would be really, really interesting getting into the late second and whatnot. But that's not what we have. I do think that even the later picks gain value. I think that sometimes, because they are later picks And, there aren't good QBs in this class specifically. So there's like the kind of idea that maybe it thins out more quickly, as we're kind of discussing right now. But I think that those late picks, maybe people forget that they're still very valuable. And as you get closer to the draft, even those do gain value. I think there might be a misconception that they kind of are just stagnant because they're later picks, and it's really only the early picks that are going to kind of get a boost in value. But we've seen it time and time again. A guy gets picked higher than he should. Running back goes to the right landing spot, and then now these guys are bumped up a little bit higher than they potentially should be, and now these picks are gaining more value as you get closer to being on the clock. So I just think that's kind of the conversation that needs to be had around, whether or not the late picks gain value. I do think they do. I think that we need to, I don't, obviously, if you're making trades and you need to get rid of a first, I want to get rid of a late first rather than an early first. And, but that's it's more of a hit rate thing than it is a value gaining, potential. So yeah, I do think that they can gain value. And I think that they're actually easy assets to target at this time of year, try to acquire some of, especially like the 112s, 111s. Like I'd notice a lot of people are willing to kind of just move off of those for, quick fixes, stuff that's not really going to be valuable long-term. And those are the ones I want to attack, where you're getting them for a low value. And then almost no matter what, you kind of have the higher valued asset for a longer period of time, for the most part. It's more liquid too. So I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about hit rates, and it's something I wanted to bring up when I have the data in front of me, not tonight, but like it was like over the last 5 years, you had picks 1 through 4 had a hit rate of, like 60%, something like that. But it was actually the picks like 110, 111, 112 over the last like 5 years have had a higher hit rate than the middle of the pack of the rookie. And that's just something I really want to dive into, because you would just think that like whatever you're picking at 106 is definitely going to have a better chance of hitting than what you're picking at 111. But over the last 5 years or so, it just hasn't been true. But maybe we'll bring that up at some other point.
Yeah, I got to make it. I'm going to make a note of that right now. I think that's a super interesting conversation to kind of look into the actual players that make up those buckets and kind of like what's going on there. I think it's interesting.
Probably has a lot to do with like folks getting moved up and down based on combine and stuff, instead of like, I don't know. We'll talk about it later. But what we're going to talk about tonight, this is what I was tasked with. So if you're following the NFL Combine, typically us degens, if you're playing Dynasty, that's probably something that you look forward to every year. Probably were watching the Combine before you started playing Dynasty, like myself. And if you're on social media, you probably see posts from Kent Lee Platt or people referencing his database, which is RAS for short, RAS. It stands for Relative Athletic Score. And just for those who aren't super familiar with it, I thought I would talk a little bit about it. And this comes from him. He did the whole research just to kind of prove, hey, what I'm doing is not futile. Like, these numbers matter. And he uses not like fantasy points per game, which is something that like we would like to see. And I'm sure there's some work out there that has done that. I have not done that, but there's probably some sort of correlation between that. So basically, the relative athletic score helps NFL teams and us evaluate prospects by comparing the athletic performance to peers of the same position. His database goes back to 1998, but I believe he tries to keep everything relevant from 2000 going forward. And every player is based on their athletic testing at the combine, 40-yard dash, 10-yard splits, height, weight, arm length, etc. He compiles it with the algorithm to give him a scale of 0 to 10. And that's just it's a percentage thing. So if you're a score of 5.01, you're just barely above the average. If you're below 5, you're below average. It's pretty simple for people to understand. His cards are color-coded on his website and all that to kind of tell you, hey, green's good, yellow's like, okay, and red's bad, right? So, but with his data going back to 2000 and just looking at all the players that were drafted and which ones had made the Pro Bowl, 58.5% of the people that were drafted and made the Pro Bowl had a RAS score above 8, which obviously indicates a strong correlation between RAS and elite NFL performance. Again, this doesn't have to do with fantasy points per game, but I think we could all just understand that if you have a position player, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, running back, if they're making the Pro Bowl, they probably had a pretty good year. If they had a pretty good year in the NFL, they probably had a pretty good year for you in fantasy. Only 12% of the Pro Bowlers had a RAS below 5. So I didn't see what he had for anything below like 3 or 2.5. But if you're under that 50% threshold, your chances of reaching a Pro Bowl since 2000 is 12%. Position-specific analysis. So does it matter for quarterbacks? Does it matter for wide receivers, running backs, tight ends? Which does it matter more? The easy answer is it really matters more for tight ends than any other position. So out of the Pro Bowlers at tight end, 77.7% had a RAS over 8. That's telling you that anybody that had a RAS score below 8, only 23% ever made the Pro Bowl, right? Running backs with a RAS over 8%, 60.3 made a Pro Bowl. Wide receivers with a RAS over 8 was about 53%. And so this whole RAS composite score, again, it takes into 40 time, 10-yard split, bench press, height, weight, and all those other things. One thing that's important to point out when it just comes to R squared or coefficient of how much does it really matter? The R squared for wide receivers is actually age, the thing that matters the most, which is kind of intuitive when we talk about breakout age, early declares, and all that stuff. It really doesn't matter. Like arm length, 40 doesn't really matter. Arm length, size, all those stuff. Age is probably the most important thing when it comes to athletic testing at the combine for wide receivers with an R squared of 0.29, which is not even that great, but it's better than every other testing. I think that's kind of why like Peter Howard refers to it as like the underwear Olympics. Like it doesn't really matter. And that's kind of the short of it. Like it doesn't matter. Like one drill itself doesn't really matter. 3 cone, short shuttle, all that. It's really just like if you could take all those things, which Kent Lee Plant has done, and compile all the drills together to give you a number between 0 and 10 that everybody could agree on and understand. It makes being able to compare past prospects a lot easier to understand, like just how athletic these guys are. Sorry about my throat. And even going back to the quarterbacks, he states that out of the quarterbacks that made the Pro Bowl since 2000 that had a RAS over 8 was 51.3%. So that tells you it does really kind of matter.
Yeah, no, that's really good stuff. I did want to. I'm glad that we went over that. I think that it's really good highlighting like the position specific stuff because, like, you know, again, everybody loves the combine. Everybody gets into it. Everybody kind of puts a different level of importance on, you know, the 40-yard dash or all those different things. And I do think that the RAS score does a good job of, you know, giving you a composite grade on, you know, the different athletic testing. And for me, I mean, the way I've always used it is kind of how the number is laid out. Like, I don't really, I mean, it obviously is indicative for wide receivers and quarterbacks at some level, but like there's plenty of other things that we can look to and that we can, you know, for like a quick like highlight of like, oh, you know, is this a good indicator? I think for tight ends, like 77% of them like making the Pro Bowl, like we know that a RAS score of below 8 is a pretty big negative for a tight end. Like these guys for fantasy, we need them to be hyper athletic, right? And so that is a huge thing. Like I also think that it's semi-important for running backs at some level, but then again, you know, you see Kyron and you see Bucky both below like 3. Yes. You know, both of those guys were below 3. So like, again, that's 60% of them. So like a lot of them, obviously it matters for the, you know, the majority, but not like the large majority. It's just over 50%. So like, honestly, for like anything, like the only thing I'm looking at RAS score for, or really the combine for, is mostly tight end. And unfortunately, this year, as you and I were talking about before we got on, the top guys didn't test, so we didn't really get much out of this. I mean, you got what's that kid that Terrence Ferguson, I think.
Terrence Ferguson, yeah.
Yeah, showed out at the combine. He looked pretty good. Like, he gave you the RAS score that you want to see out of one of those late round tight ends. So he'll obviously be kind of a riser, or this will be like an indicator of like, oh, maybe this guy is something that we should be looking more into, right? And so like that's the way I'm looking at the combine. Were there any really that stood out to you? Like, and not just tight ends, like anybody in general at the combine that stood out to you? I think the one that I'll just throw one out there for me that stood out to me, which probably others too, but RJ Harvey, I just thought he had a really good combine. We talked about him a week or two ago on the pod. We all kind of ended up liking him. I think you maybe surprised a little bit by the profile, and then he goes out and he just has a great performance at the combine, really good 40-yard dash. But so that's just one who kind of stood out to me. I know he'll have a great RAS score, and that'll obviously carry him probably a little higher into the draft than maybe he was before, for the NFL teams. But did anybody stand out to you when you were watching the draft? I know you're a little bit of a junkie.
I am. So I think I had talked about it, but Jalen Noel.
We talked about that on the side.
Mm-hmm. He's not a guy I knew anything about before the combine. He goes out there and he does, I think he does all the drills, and pretty much all of them he just absolutely smashes. So he's a guy that I need to go and just kind of like look like, who is this guy? And I think that's really useful for the combine, is like when you see a guy that's super athletic, because athleticism in the NFL absolutely matters, right? So maybe this is a guy from a small school that had like a lot of production that people just weren't talking about. Like, definitely somebody I really want to get into a lot more is Jalen Noel, and also the other Jalen Royal.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, Jalen Noel had a crazy 40, 4.39 40, and Jalen Royals a 4.42 40. So both those guys, super fast. And then a 6.82 for Jalen Noel, and the 3-cone, really good for Noel. I know that he dominated throughout this. I don't think Royals ran the 3-cone, the 10 split though. Royals 1.49 at the top there, and Noel 1.51. So I mean, this class was really fast. They had a bunch of fast guys, both at running back and wide receiver. But then you asked, you kind of, and I don't know if we didn't do Noel. We'll get into him eventually, but like, there's just some hole in his game for sure from like a technical standpoint. But the guy is like, you can see he's hyper athletic, and he knows how to. He has like really good body control, really, deceleration, acceleration. So it's like he has like some really unique traits that like in the middle of the route he can use to separate pretty well. Just like a little bit of a smaller guy, but like 190, not that small. I mean, not for this day and age. Like that's fine. So I think he could be pretty successful. And Jalen Royals, I like him a lot. I think after the catch guy, he's also just pretty polished. So hoping both of those guys continue to get the buzz that they deserve. But I think those are good shots for sure. But yeah, I mean, the combine's fun, but I don't know if it's all that indicative of future success. But I do think that there are some like nuggets for specific positions. And if you know how to kind of put it all together, like not one athletic test is going to really give you, any indication of anything, but you kind of put it all together. And I think you see kind of like the speed scores when it's like weight adjusted, it's not just looking at the 40, you kind of start getting a little bit more of the truth, right? When you start really looking at the I think the deeper layering to it than it is just like the surface level. Yeah, exactly. And Jake here, Jalen Royals for president. I know he's a DU darling this cycle. So we'll see how that goes. We'll definitely do a Jalen Knowles and Royal prospect profile, and hopefully we'll get Jake back to do that one. Yeah, it'll be a good one.
All right, so I just want to finish off again. This is coming from Kent Lee Platt at MathBomb on social medias, and he just had a couple that stood out from this year. So you have Amarian Hampton, also a guy that because he's a bigger body dude, right? Yeah.
He's like
he came out the RAS
215 or 220 or something. Came in huge.
Yeah. He plays big too. So he has a RAS of 9.6. Caleb Johnson, a guy I still really like. No RAS score because he didn't do the bench. Darn it. Christian Judkins from Ohio State, 9.89. Bashul Tootin, which obviously if you were watching Tootin was Scootin', he had a RAS of 9.29, but he's small. He's like 5'9", 206. compact but small. Luther Burden didn't test enough. Trey Harris, this is a guy like I can see why people would talk about him as being like top 3 wide receiver, possibly in this class with a RAS of 9.02. And of course, we talked about him last week with just every single advanced metric just being off the charts for Trey Harris. Really excited to see where he goes. But long story short, the RAS score combine testing is great. The numbers at the combine by themselves just don't typically mean a whole lot. But when you have a guy like this compile it and put it into a very easy to understand score, color coded and everything, kind of helps you understand based on, height, size, and everything else, like how good is this athletic testing compared to people in the past. So that's all I got.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Definitely not the end all be all, but it's a good window into, kind of the athletic framework of a given prospect. I think, some of these guys obviously don't test as well as they actually play. So it's not an end all be all, but I just going back to Amari in Hampton, he came in at 221 and he ran a 4.46. That's pretty explosive, man. Like that's
crazy.
It's getting him crazy buzz. I mean, I'm seeing him going consistently at 103 in rookie mocks, and I'm seeing the quarterbacks fall like to the middle and past that. So I think some of that'll be shaken up a little bit in real time, real drafts when we come down to when Cam Ward is going, top 5 pick in the NFL draft or something is going to shake things up a bit there. But it's interesting stuff. We'll get into all that as we go. But okay, good stuff. Yeah, I'm glad we talked about that. Combine's fun.
All right. Let's talk about some profiles here. We have Colston Loveland. Jake's not with us here, but I will read what Jake has for us. I should edit it and be like, yes, it's totally Jake's.
Just your thoughts and just under Jake's name.
Just say it's Jake's. But yeah, Colston Loveland. Jake says super effective lead blocker, long build. He uses leverage very well. He's stronger than perceived, helped by good, but not great form. Loves his top of the route movement, nuance, and change of direction. Says he has sharp footwork, helps with both his route running and his blocking, in Jake's opinion. He says he has concerns about Colston Loveland. Draft location plus utilization. JJ McCarthy season versus 2024 night and day regarding usage, but tape great in both. And he improved his blocking in 24. Overall, near elite in athleticism, great hands, upper level technique and blocking lands him at tight end 1 by a good margin.
Yeah.
Ooh, tight end.
I mean, I agree with that for sure. Yeah, I agree with the tight end 1 part. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess, just off the back of that, I would like to say I don't know if this class is as, like, great as everybody is touting it to be. I think that there's maybe, like, a deeper, I wouldn't say there's any, like, elite tight ends in this class. Like, if you're looking at last year, like, there's nothing near Brock Bowers level, you know what I mean? But there's, like, the next tier or two below, there's, like, a couple of guys in that tier, you know what I mean? So it's a little bit deeper from that perspective. And so I think that's why it's getting, like, the buzz. There's, like, quite a few guys who could be, starter level decent guys. But, like, I don't see that, like, upper echelon in any of these players. I think they're all relatively close, but I agree with Jake and sort of my film scores that Loveland is, quite a bit ahead of the other 3 that we're going to talk about today. But yeah, overall, I mean, I think that's a good read on it. It's a really, really good blocker. I didn't really expect to see what I saw when I threw on the tape. I thought he was going to be a lot more of a Gesicki type of deal, and he's really not at all. Just, when it comes to blocking, just above average technique. I mean, leading with his hands engaged, low pad level, gets, really good power. Just in general, really good. But outside of that, I mean, this is a hyper athletic, well-rounded tight end. He exhibits good, not great route technique, above average, not elite, excellent ball skills, displays ability to secure targets outside of his frame in contested catch situations. lanky frame can allow defenders to knock him around a little bit in, midair or swat balls away at times, but I'm not sure that's going to be a problem as he kind of builds his frame out at the next level. Great suddenness at the top of the route to separate from defenders, similar to what Jake was saying there. Creates really good separation with physicality, lacks manipulation, movement, and high-end stem nuance, but above average in the latter. So, he is throwing in some, shoulder leans and leaning routes, to elude defenders, mid-route, those kind of things. Great footwork from release at the top of the route, good pacing and zone coverage, and to know when to utilize, speed and burst. So it's not all just one speed, which you do see with some of these tight ends in this class. Very good after the catch, but lacks lateral elusiveness. I don't think any of these guys in this class are great laterally. Tight ends in general aren't like the best laterally, but if you're looking to like the best of the best, you're looking at like, the Travis Kelce's, the Kittles, those kind of guys. And when you see them really able to kind of go sideways on guys, you just don't see that from many, and not in this class either. But very good after the catch ability, lacks that lateral elusiveness, creates yards with good speed and physicality. And I already mentioned the blocking. So yeah, really well-rounded guy, above average in most respects, but some holes in all these guys' games, but mostly like the finer details and the fundamentals are there. So I think, this is a player that could definitely grow into a higher end player at the next level. So, that's why he's going to, grade well above the following, the guys that we're going to talk about after this. But if we're looking at the data for Colson Loveland, sorry, just Colson Loveland on the data side of things. I don't know if you were going to jump into that, but it looks great. Like just all the yards per out runs numbers are fantastic. Like well above 2.5 for the overall man, 2.84, zone 2.17, average dominator 28.30.
Very good
in the final year. Percent. Yeah. First down per route run is crazy. Early declare, all the good stuff. Yards after catch just really isn't there, but that kind of shows up on tape, so I'm not surprised about it.
Cool. All right. Next one we have is Tyler Warren. Did he win the John Mackey Award? That's actually crazy. If you go look and just look at the list of tight ends who've won the award, like the hit rate's insane. Anyway, that's kind of off topic, but
yeah, sorry, I'm looking it up right now. That's why.
Tyler Warren.
He did, by the way. Yes, he won.
That. Yeah. It's a pretty good list. Tyler Warren. From Jake. High levels of concentration and intelligence regarding flight of ball, positional lineup, etc. So high IQ. Seen him line up a slot, tight end, Z, and center. Sure-handed. Enjoy a wide range of catching positions. Jake's concerns are Allure might get caught up in the utilization rather than the expressionism in the utilization. He'll have to explain that sentence at some point in time.
All right, poetry from Jake for Tyler Warren.
Yeah, general blocking portfolio is limited, and what is seen isn't superb. Overall, he's a talented tight end prospect with clear gaps in college football tape. Interested in adaptation process and utilization compared to college. Jake says he's tight end 2.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Yeah. Going back to the Allure might get caught up in the utilization rather than the expressionism in the utilization. I think it's more about like what he's doing with the utilization or how he's, once he gets the ball, like what he's actually doing with it. Because, to Jake's point, like he was funneled targets left and right. It was, wildcat. It was rushing the ball. You name it. He was, part of the scheme. And so I think it was more that what he was doing after the catch wasn't as impressive as you wanted it to be, given the, I guess the hype really is what it is. But for me, another pretty well-rounded tight end, smooth moving guy, exhibiting exceptional ball skills and above average after the catch ability, lacks true speed and extra gear to unlock true upside, but does display great bend and movability throughout body. Excellent curve linear movement. So like one of the only guys in the class where he just looks like the most natural runner. Like when he's running, like the side to side movements don't look rigid or arduous. He's just really smooth wherever he's going, kind of strafing. He can move kind of forward and laterally at the same time. You don't see a lot of guys kind of being able to do that kind of thing. It takes a little bit more effort, but good transition speed from catch to run. Demonstrates above average elusiveness, underwhelming route technique, but offers a smooth and quick release, but lacks great suddenness, stem nuance, and below average manipulation movement. So for me, I just didn't see a lot in the middle of the route. A lot of schemed up stuff for him. But when he's running at the top of the route, it wasn't really not a bunch of pop to it, in my opinion. I just think that in terms of the detail that you want to see there, there was something missing for me. So, and this is my next sentence, leaves a lot to be desired from a route technique perspective. Displays skills needed to be an above average blocker, but currently lacks technique and allows defenders to get under him and move him off his spot. Doesn't get low enough pad level, in my opinion. So again, pretty much above average in most regards. But it's just, again, those finer details are missing for me. And then the blocking could potentially be a problem. I think he does have the skills to kind of get there, and he has the frame to get there. But right now it's just not quite all put together. But yeah, really good player as well. I just don't quite see that high end upside there. You've heard kind of like the Brock Bowers kind of conversations. I'm sorry, like even the Gronkowski, I feel like conversations, you kind of heard those hovering around. I really don't see it at all.
Yeah. Just watching him run the gauntlet, and you were talking about how he's a really good, looks good running.
Yeah.
Maybe I had to watch more, but every time I saw him run, it looks terrible. Senior Bowl just looks funny. The combine, I thought he looked really goofy out there running around, but I said the same thing about Dallas Goedert. So what do I know?
I gotta watch him at the combine. I don't think I caught the tight ends or at least any of the top tight ends who ran. Yeah, I gotta check it out. But
running it.
That's interesting. I mean, what's funny is it's more after the catch is what I'm talking about. And that's more through and during the catch, which is definitely a different mechanism that your body's going through. And it's really after the catch is where he just kind of glides where he's trying to go. It doesn't take effort to go side to side or to change direction or to go around edges. He kind of is able to just bend and, gain those angles and edges on defenders much more easily than some of these other guys who are a little bit more duck-footed, flat-footed, and can't quite go side to side.
Gotcha. So some PFF first year. So yards after the catch per reception was 7.5, which is decent. ADOT 7.5. Used in a slot about 32%. Yards per route run 3.76. Man yards per route run 2.79. Zone was 4.42. Average dominator of 22.8. Early declare. First down per route run, really, really good. Those are all pretty good. I just wish he had did more testing at the combine just for fun.
Yeah, I mean, he was dominant. They fed him every target and every handoff they possibly could. So his numbers are outrageous, no matter how you look at them. I think I had the playoff numbers in mind as well, and I think it kind of simmers down the overall yards per out run, but it's still over 3 with man yards per hour. The numbers are just outrageous, no matter what. But Jake popping in here real quick. Some commentary online has Warren slotting directly into tight end 3. How big of a DC gap would you need to get Warren above Loveland? What? I mean, Warren would have to go well above Loveland, I feel like. I guess that's Jake's point. I feel like I would need to see I think for Warren to jump Loveland. I mean, the situation matters too. We've talked about this a lot, but I think I would need probably something like first round draft capital for Warren, and then Loveland falls a little bit into the second or third or something like that. And I'd be and the situation's good. Of course, that's, I think that you can get there with it, but then there's going to be a pretty nice discount on Loveland. And if the situation's good, I mean, you're still going to want to do that. And maybe you can trade back and think of those kind of things depending on how much you like Warren in a situation and all that. I think it matters. I don't think any of these guys are I don't think that Loveland is that much better than Warren that if it was such a good situation, plus the DC was there, that you can't kind of adjust. And I think that's what we should do as good evaluators at some level. Obviously, not throwing out your entire evaluation on Loveland again. I think if he falls there, we're probably going to be able to get him in a better spot. So it's kind of twofold there. And neither of the situation is bad in my mind, but it can be. We don't often think of the negative situations. If Colston falls and he goes to a bad situation, things change. And same for Warren. We'll see. But I think that right. the DC needs to be pretty significant for me is the answer. Sorry.
So Harold Fannin Jr. Is the next one. Jake's thoughts. Mainly highlights. He had a difficult time locking down snap videos. He says, where the F is the footwork. It says inability to understand body balance. Shows both in route running and run after the catch. Looks athletic in comparison to competition as seen at Combine. This falls short. High level receiver of the ball. In simple terms, ball comes to Harold. Harold catches it. Overall, competition level allowed for an odd athlete to break out and look like college Pitts in terms of dominance when really he's even more flawed. And now I have to actually make a correction because I had skipped ahead in our show sheets. And as you were talking about Warren, I was actually looking at Fannin. And Fannin's the guy that I'm talking about runs like a draft. Looks terrible. He's the one that when you want to go look at the gauntlet, it's not pretty. Good. So I mixed those up. Fannin's the guy that he just looks like your drunk college buddy going out there doing the gauntlet. And I mean that with every part of my being. And it looks like Jake sees the same thing in his. So sorry about that. I mixed those two up. Fannin's the guy that runs goofy, not Warren.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to even go watch his gauntlet to know that. I mean, he got a pretty underwhelming footwork score from me as well. I feel like he is duck-footed. His feet, when I say duck-footed, they point out, and I just don't think that from a running motion perspective, it is optimal to have that disposition. It's not. I just don't think that is best for running, and you can kind of see it when he runs. It prevents him from great lateral agility. Mostly is the issue, but also it makes him a little bit clunky coming out of his release. And it feels like he takes this extra launch step where he kind of almost steps backwards to push himself off from release, which is just not a great thing from, kind of a strategic standpoint working against the defender. And so that was just kind of some of the technical fundamental stuff I noticed that I really disliked. But again, he is pretty well-rounded. He's a pretty good blocker in my opinion. He's really good at the catch point, and he's pretty good after the catch, but he really excels at the catch point. And I think that's where he got the best grades from me is, his ball tracking in his hands. Fairly average route technique with highlights of suddenness and stem nuance, lacking refinement from release and with footwork. Runs mostly one speed, so he lacks some pacing. And I kind of mentioned that before when talking about Loveland, where I think that he does a good job kind of pacing through his routes, whether it's, knowing when to kind of come out slow from release and then burst, those kind of things. You just don't really see that technical nuance with a guy like Fannin. Displays good shoulder wiggle and lean mid-route, so that is some of that nuance that he does show, some head fakes, but he lacks great manipulation movements despite the quality stem nuance, exceptional hands, can secure a target from really any trajectory and away from his frame. Good, not great speed, lacks dynamic lateral agility, but enough to evade defenders pretty regularly. That said, I'm not sure how that's going to translate at the next level, given the level of competition that he was facing. Extremely physical after the catch, great use of stiff arm that should translate at the next level. So just a powerful guy after the catch, good overall awareness, above average run blocker, could refine aspects of that technique, but so I like Fannin enough. I think that he's kind of going to have a similar grade to Warren. I think it's going to be kind of it's going to be interesting. I think Fannin's going to get overdrafted in the NFL to a point where I'm not going to really want him. So I think that's what's going to happen there. And I would just rather these other guys. I just think they have more translatable skill sets, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. The data likes him.
Likes him a lot. It's crazy.
Yeah, Harold Fannin. So, shoot, did I mix these up with Warren too? It doesn't matter. We're moving on. Harold Fannin Jr.
I think you did.
Definitely got the.
I think you
definitely
did.
got the right guy here. I did.
You did.
That's
Now that I'm
okay.
looking at it, okay, that makes sense.
Warren's wasn't bad though either. I went back. It's not too shabby. But Fannin's is better. So yards after the catch per reception 7.5, 7.5 ADOT, 31% slot usage, almost 32%. 3.76 yards per route run. Man was 2.79, zone 4.42, and a dominator of 22.8. Early declare. He shows up in a lot of analytic metrics as being one of the top guys in this class.
Yeah.
But I think this is kind of where like film bros and analytic bros are just not going to come to an agreement on Harold Fannin Jr.
Yeah, and it's even tougher when he plays at Bowling Green, and like you don't really see him ever face crazy tough levels of competition. So it's like,
yeah,
you know, which makes it harder for the film and the data to get on the same page for sure, especially when it's at this level. But yeah, I mean, Tyler Warren's still really good, 6.7 yards after the catch, you know, right in the same area, and then all the numbers are pretty much identical. But Harold Fannin does clear. He is crazy. Had crazy production. But I'm not sure I'm going to trust that. So yeah, that's not where, you know, that's not where the story ends with Harold Fannin. There's much more to it.
Fannin did have a RAS score out of these 4 that we talked about. His was 7.84.
That's not good.
Just under 8.
I mean, it's not the worst, but it's not good.
Yep.
It's not what you want to see.
All right. Lastly, Elijah Arroyo. I think he had a pretty good combine. Jake's thoughts. He says he reads play incredibly well for a tight end after the catch. On multiple occasions, he leads wide receivers to block for him with extended hand. I like that. General athleticism is high. Might peak above for me in comparison to tight end class due to slight undersized frame, mainly in speed. Jake's concerns are with Arroyo. He's got a huge injury history in college football, a prospect I'd want to see creep down the boards for me to acquire. Overall, the tape matches up well for me. I enjoy his athleticism, but could see Arroyo being phased out of an NFL offense. Current tape grade has him at tight end 3, but maybe I'm too low on Fannin.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's kind of... That's kind of how I feel about it. I don't know, like, if I'm as hesitant on my evaluation of Fannin necessarily, but I was surprised by how much I liked Arroyo. I thought that he was really skilled at the catch point, and he was really athletic. Not a terrible blocker at all, actually, above average blocker. One of the better blockers that I watched. Per my score, I did think that from a route technique perspective, there was, you know, left a lot to be desired, but when it comes to tight end, it's not nearly as necessary as it is for receivers. Generally, it's, you know, these are, you know, they don't take nearly as much time to develop these routes. So slightly undersized hybrid tight end for Arroyo, exhibiting near elite ball skills and athleticism. Lacks lateral agility to truly elevate his game with ability to evade defenders. Very good yak ability due to speed and burst despite lacking evasiveness. So really more just like really good straightaway speed, and you know, and he knows how to use it, and he does have pretty good field vision, so he can kind of navigate the field. But I just don't think he really has great side-to-side evasiveness or anything like that. Excellent blocker, given he's slightly undersized, stays wide and strong following his target and engaged. Lacks some route nuance, but does release and separate well, which is really what's the most important part for the tight ends. Also displays good footwork at second level release, like at the top of his route, taking that from Restrepo, the wide receiver, second level release. I love that. I heard him use it, and I think it really does a good job to describe like what is happening, where it's like the receiver releases and then they're going, you know, they're running through the stem of the route and they have a break point, and it's kind of their second level release where they're, you know, making another move kind of at the top of the route to separate. And I think, you know, he does a good job of using his footwork there to kind of make that separation. And so he got a really good score for me, and I didn't really talk about the specific scores, and I'm going to put this all this in the Discord soon so you guys can see it, but he got a 64 Just for reference, Fannin, or let's go Warren, 65.5, which tied with Fannin, 65.5, and then Loveland got a 69. So they're not all that far apart,
Nice.
especially the last three we talked about are very, very close together. Loveland came out, a couple points ahead, 4 or 5, so which is pretty significant for the grading scale. But yeah, so I thought those last three we talked about, Fannin, Warren, and Arroyo, are a lot closer than people probably imagine them being, or thought about them being, or at least myself for sure before I got into the evaluation. So Arroyo was not on my radar as one of these, top, 4-ish guys, but he certainly is now. So I'm kind of excited about him. I didn't check the numbers beforehand. I wonder how those look.
Pretty good. So what you say from an athletic standpoint, which I think we saw at the combine too, out of all the 4 guys we've talked about, Elijah Arroyo, his yak ability and his his yak yards after the catch per reception is 9.1. His ADOT was 11. Those are both like darn near double.
Phenomenal.
And good for a tight end. Slot percentage was 51.6. Yard per route run is 1.7. Zone yard per route run is 2.27, which is really good. Man yard per route run is only 0.85, but I don't know how many snaps he played against man, right? So,
but that's so indicative. He is a zone beater, bro. He is a zone beater, and so I think at the next level that will translate.
And then his first down per route run is 7.2. These are all really good marks, especially just like the yak and ADOT and zone yard per route run. Like, by listening to your notes and looking at the numbers and what I just saw from the combine, like I could see what he looks like out there in a ways. That is kind of exciting.
That's cool, and you can kind of envision it based on the profile, the numbers, and kind of the film breakdowns. Like that's when you're getting somewhere, when it's kind of piecing it together, and you're like, I see that. Yeah. Like what I saw from the athletic standpoint, you can kind of see it all being puzzle pieced together. I liked him a lot. I think that there's going to be a pretty strong competition, and I think to Jake's point, he'd like to see him fall a little bit so that he can get him for a value. I'm not sure that Arroyo is going to get selected anywhere near where these other guys are going to get selected in the NFL draft. I don't think he's probably going to go at least potentially 2 rounds further than maybe Fannin, but at least probably a round beyond where Fannin goes, and it's going to end up being maybe 2 or 3 rounds beyond where the top tight end goes. So I think you're going to get probably late 2nd, 3rd round on Arroyo in our rookie drafts, and that's going to be. I think a really valuable selection. So I like these guys. I like some of them more than the others. Obviously, Loveland and Arroyo I think are my favorite at what's going to be cost. But I hope the best for Warren, and I'm really just not feeling the profile for Fannin despite the numbers. There's something about the feet, the footwork. I don't know if it can get right, and there's also this like. I may have wrote it down in one of in one of the sections. There's like, literally almost a hitch in his giddy up, which is a funny way to put it. But like, how, and it might be because Kyle Pitts was injured, but how Kyle Pitts sometimes he like lacks that like hinge fluidity in his running motion, where it's almost like he's like giddy. He's like literally like a horse, like taking steps like that, trying to like pick up speed. Like that's what you see when Fannin really tries to get going running. And I'm like, that's not really athletic, and he's going to get caught doing that like quite a bit. And so it left a bad taste in my mouth. So we'll see where he goes. But that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, even like the non-trained eye could see that the Pro Bowl and the combine. It just didn't look. it wasn't a pleasure to look at.
Yeah.
So. All right, cool, man. It just looks weird. I mean, that's
running style disgusts me, bro.
Well, I mean, that's what I did with the running backs too. I'm like, that just doesn't look right. But that's my film assessment. All right, cool. That was awesome. I do wish those guys had done more testing at the combine, just for selfish reasons. But hopefully they'll do stuff at pro days.
What's so frustrating is like the RAS score is such a nice indicator of like, especially for the elite guys who are also just good. You're like, oh, so like Fannin is a great one, right? Where it's like he had really crazy numbers, wild shit, but then his RAS score is a little lower, and you're like, yeah, that also matches up with the tape. Like, might be a little something to worry about here. But then if you look at Warren, and you're like, maybe there's some stuff, but he, jumps out the gym at like a 999. You're like, okay, wow, that all put together is like, that's pretty good. Same with Loveland and Arroyo obviously put together a pretty good workout, and you're like, okay, this is solid. But you'd like to see it to give you that extra level of confidence at the end of the day. But whatever, we don't get it.
We'll see. Hopefully pro days.
Pro days, all yes, right. True.
Let's get some trades and non-trades before we get out of here. So this one happened real quick. This was, I think, DU2. This is your trade, but
all Josh but one of these are my trades. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So Josh put Freiermuth on the block, and I think within 20 minutes, a trade was completed. And so yeah, you sent over Matt Stafford for Pat Freiermuth, 1.5 tight end premium.
Yeah. I made a couple trades with Josh, actually. I believe. I think one of these other ones is in DU2 as well, and it happened before this. So a little bit of that cascading trade effect, which we'll actually go through in the last series of trades we're going to talk about here. But it's funny. Jake immediately responded and was like, I forgot what he said, but he was basically like, let's talk. And I was like, oh, okay, some competition here. I do like Freiermuth. I think that, even at the end of the year last year, he had a nice showing. We've always known that he has, really good upside, really good fundamentals as a tight end. Like, he's a good tight end. He's a starting tight end in this league, 26 years old. You really expect them to do something at the QB position, but even if not, I think he's young enough. He has a ton of runway to grow into, a role with a new QB along the way, however long that may take, whether it's with the Steelers or elsewhere. I just like him as a player. And my team is really rebuilding in this league. I think I can do a fairly quick one, but I have like Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson, like a bunch of low end QBs. And I'm thinking, what am I going to use Matthew Stafford for? I've been trying to trade this guy for the better part of like a year. Nobody's biting. Not much is changing with this guy's situation. And Freiermuth is 26 years old compared to a 37-year-old quarterback. I'm like, let me just see if I can flip my old quarterback for a young tight end who probably will be on my roster for much longer than that quarterback will be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think their values are pretty similar from Dynasty perspective, in my opinion. And so it felt like a fair trade. That's kind of how I feel about it. Even though it's super flex and the QBs are king at some level, felt like this made sense.
I like it. That was just like my first thought was, hey, this is super flex. That's a quarterback, but the way you lay it out, like, it all makes sense. I don't think it's egregious or anything at all. So I think it's a good return for Freiermuth, and I think that Freiermuth is a pretty good return for Stafford, considering your situation.
I think that's a good read on it. I wonder if in like a perfect world, I could have pushed on it and got like something else. Saying basically like, look, this is a quarterback, man. Like, I don't know how I could just give him up for a tight end and kind of push on that a little bit. But it's Josh.
There might have been something there.
There might have been something there, but it's Josh, and like, it's like, what am I going to be pressing him for, like a third or a fourth, maybe? And like, if you're even going to get that, and it's like, I don't know. I figured we had just made a trade before. Let's just copacetically get through this one. So yeah.
Cool. Next one is Clear Shakir for Deebo Samuel and the 306. This is after the news that Deebo is going to be traded.
Yeah.
And Shakir got a 4-year contract extension, by the way.
He did. Yes. I like both of these players, honestly. But like, I don't know. It just like Shakir doesn't feel like a player with enough upside that I don't feel like I'll just take Deebo with the plus, especially him being in Washington. And I think this happened after it did happen after the Washington trade. It was announced. So yeah, like knowing that, I would have wanted extra. And let me throw this on here from earlier. I forgot to throw this on, but Joe in the comments, FYI, tried trading Deebo for an early second so far. No dice. Throwing that up there because maybe it's not really as easy to get off of Deebo as I'm thinking it will be based on this news. I haven't gotten any bites. I did throw him on the block in 1 or 2 leagues, so I'm surprised by that, to be honest with you, because I do think it's a decent situation. But again, I'll probably just take Deebo here with the higher upside in what is kind of a similar situation. Like, if we're being honest. from a team perspective and scheme perspective and all that, yeah, I think I'll just take Debo in the plus and hope I get a couple of years of productivity out of him. Maybe the calculation is different if you're a contender, if you're a rebuilder, but I almost think it might be the same. And you just try to flip Debo down the road.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
Okay.
And also, yeah, Debo I think is probably not super easy to move, and probably this news just made it a lot easier to actually, okay, finally somebody's actually insisted. I don't think if that trade came through for Debo to go to Washington, I don't know if this deal gets done. So I think that kind of really did help make Debo more fluid. All right, next one, Ricky Pearsall.
Would you would rather the Debo side though, or would you rather the Shakir side?
Yes.
Okay.
It's still Debo. Yeah. Shakir's nice, but it's not like you said. The upside's not quite there.
I'm at like
you can see Debo having like a.
Go ahead. Sorry, what you're saying is 100% correct. Yeah, no, like he could have like what, the 30-point game or something. Like he could have crazy games. Like he absolutely could.
Shakir's not going to do that. I don't think.
No, he's not. But like I guess what I'm thinking is like Debo to me is worth two times seconds, like 2 seconds of some sort. That's where I'd be trying to get the value. And I know Joe's saying that he's trying to get an early second. That may be too much. Maybe it's a second and a third where you get to, but that's the more liquid area I want to get to if I'm moving off of Debo. Like Shakir is fine, but again, it's just like he doesn't feel like he's that easy to move either, and he's not giving you that upside. So that's where I'm at on that. Yeah.
All right, Ricky Pearsall for the 112 and 409.
Yeah, this is my trade as well.
Talk about it.
Well, I mean, go ahead. What are your thoughts? Don't let me influence you.
With the news, thanks. Of Debo leaving, leaves you with what? Christian McCaffrey, Ayuk, and Kittle. Still a lot of competition there. Assuming they don't bring in another wide receiver, which they could. I think it's a little much to give up for Pearsall, but I could see the hype and what could possibly be with Pearsall there. I still just think that, the 112 and it's just a 409, but the 112, like I think that's a little rich for Pearsall, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on it. I was moving Pearsall here, and this was also in DU too. And I like the trade was originally a little different where I was like giving something up with Pearsall to get the 112. And I just felt like based on Debo leaving, like his value should be a little bit higher than that, And so this is obviously where it ended up at was the 112 plus a 4th round pick for Pearsall. And I just feel like, looking at the kind of prospects that are going to be there at the end of the first round, being that my team is rebuilding, I think I'm going to be able to get into an asset that will have a higher hit rate than Pearsall, who was even in and of himself, he was a 1st round pick in the NFL draft, 2nd round pick in our Dynasty rookie drafts. We can talk about the different hit rates of those different things, but he just the kind of player that he is and his profile coming out of college, I'm just not that confident in it to have him as part of a key cog in a rebuilding team, So it felt like the heady move to just move off for the 112 reset. Maybe I can get a higher end asset plus. Yeah.
I like it. And the rest of the year is here too. So 1 quarterback, cascading trades. What do you got to get?
Okay. Yeah. So this was interesting. So this is all in the same league. And I've been trying to get into more elite type assets if I can, in cheaper ways if possible, just trying to load up for, championship runs in certain leagues. And this is one of them where I have a really good team. I was just in the championship. I just lost, and I'm trying to kind of reset a little bit, retool a little bit here. And so the first trade I made in this 1 QB league was Amon-Ra for Devon A-Chain and the 108. So just start there. What are your thoughts on that trade? And we can go from there.
It's probably pretty even. So you're moving off of Amon-Ra is kind of hard, but A-Chain still got gas, and the 108 is a good way for you to get a nice young player. One of those running backs coming out of the draft. I think it's even.
Okay. Yeah. And so for me, I mean, I think that Amon-Ra has a chance. I mean, he always is obviously one of the top wide receivers, but I think he has a chance to get up in that, top 5, top 3 potential range. Like he's, that good in that good of a situation. And I just have some concerns with A-Chain that he, not that he can't play a full season. It's not size or anything or injury related or anything like that. It's just more scheme related. And can he keep up that level of production at running back for as long as, we want a guy to? It's hard to do it. It has nothing to do with size. It's just hard for anybody to do it at that level. And I'm concerned about, bringing some competition, changes over there, a whole bunch of things. But I think adding the 108 in a 1 QB league, granted, you're right, there's going to be some decent running backs at the back end there, but the QBs aren't going to be that juicy. So it's going to push things up a little bit. I felt like A-Chain plus the 108 wasn't that much to pay for an asset like Amon-Ra, who can you can kind of sit him on your roster for the next like 5 or 6 years and not have any problems, or you have a really, really good trade piece. You know what I mean?
It's a really good point.
And so like, it's not like, I'm not banking on this 5-year longevity. Nobody plays Dynasty in that kind of window, but he has that kind of longevity attached to him compared to an A-Chain and a question mark at 108. So I do think that it's a good trade. I don't think it's like anybody got swindled here or anything. I much prefer the asset that is Amon-Ra. So I felt good about that one. And that happened on February 26th. And this trade is in a league that's, not as active. It's not like a bunch of people from the fantasy community, more of like a home style league where I think, people are impacted by league activity. And so I started getting trade offers left and right after this trade and started, sending out some more trade offers, kind of seeing that things were getting going. And on March 1st, so, 4 days after the February 26th trade, which was the Amon-Ra trade, and I had been having some conversations in between, so it really got things going fast. But it took a day or so to really hammer down the next trade. And on March 1st, the next trade that went down was the 202 plus a 27 first for Ayuk, a 26 fourth, and 304. What do you think about that one?
Man, I'm wondering if you could get a piece that ends up being as valuable as Ayuk with the 202 there. I think I still have to go with Ayuk here, with the Debo out, as we talked about throughout this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have to go with Ayuk at the 26 fourth, the 304 over the 27 first and 202 this year. I still think that Ayuk still is more valuable to have on your team, especially if you're competing. And just try to put your blinders on and rookie fever away with that 202 and the 27 first. You don't even get to use that 2027 first for 2 more years. So Ayuk's side.
That's definitely a fair read on it, fair take on it. I moved Ayuk in this situation. For context, I mean, again, it's not like the fact that you have a bunch of players doesn't mean that you can just get rid of guys necessarily. But, this team has Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, CD, Puka, Tyreek. Like it's pretty loaded. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't really need Ayuk. And I figure, let me just re-roll him into a 27 first now, which might be a lot more, 27 class is looking pretty sharp. Having 2 shots at the 27 class, and this is a 10-team league, makes me feel like I might get up a little bit higher potential for one of these really high-end picks down the road. Plus, I get the 202 this year, which I don't think I'm going to get a player as valuable as Ayuk, but there's certainly a possibility that I get a player that's, halfway nearly as valuable as him, or as valuable. You don't really know. But I felt like this was it's been hard to get out of Ayuk last year, this year, any year. And he coming back from the injury, no guarantees exactly. I do think you're right, though. I think it's a good read. I do think his value gets a boost from the Debo trade. And so that is a little concerning, but I thought the value here matched with what I did before the trade prior, basically turning the 108 into a future, first in a potentially better class. getting a better wide receiver and getting some plus, some other picks on top of it, like in combination, felt kind of good. So that was the next trade. Then same day, March 1st, another trade goes down for me. Jared Goff for a 26 and 27 third and the 409. Again, 1 QB league, so changes things. But what do you think about that trade?
1 QB, I still think it's Goff. To get a starting quarterback, enough said. I mean, you got 26, 27 thirds and 409. I don't care.
Right. Yeah. And so this is an interesting one because I acquired Goff. I had just acquired Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I also have Jahmyr Gibbs. And granted, that's a lot of like tying to that offense, but like I have some other pieces. It's not like that's the only thing I'm tied to. I'll be fine, but not a bad offense to be tied to. That said, no. I think that with the way the trades were happening, that manager had a little more leverage on me than they knew. Or at least that they could, not that they knew, but they could have pushed more, being like, dude, I know you have Amon-Ra, I know you have Gibbs. Like, I want more. Like, you know what I mean? And they never did. They never did that. They started high, but I was like, this is 1 QB. Like, I'm not trading a lot for quarterback.
Yeah, you beat them down. I can tell.
Yeah. So I felt good about that in combination. But again, I think going back to the idea of cascading trades, right? When people see one trade happen, they get juiced. They want to make trades. They want to get involved in the action. And I think that's part of what's happening here in this league. And then so one more trade happens. This one wasn't me, but again, I think it's same day, March 1st. All of this happened within 4 days, and 3 of them happened on the same day. Travis Etienne for the 204 in a 1 QB league.
I think I'm going to roll with Etienne and just hope for the bounce back.
Me too. Yeah. Me too. I agree. I think that he's so much more valuable than the 204 in a 1 QB league. And this final trade that happened in this sequence of cascading trades, I feel like is indicative of, or not indicative, but is kind of the trap you don't want to get caught in, where it's like a lot of trades are happening. You want to get in on the action. You see the rookie picks flying. You want some rookie picks, and then you trade what is a super undervalued asset right now for a really mid kind of asset in a 1 QB league. And it's like, I just feel like, everything got to the person in that moment. And it's like, and it still probably feels good to them right now because Etienne seems like a dud. But I think that, that story is not fully written, even close to it. So I like the Etienne asset there, but just looking at those trades 1, 2, 3, 4, and even going back to DU2 where Pearsall for the 112 and the 409 happens, and then Josh is like, making some trades, putting players on the block, and I jump in there. Like, there's a reason those things are happening in sequence. It happens in so many leagues we're in. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. Like, there may be different factors involved in why each person is taking the actions they're taking. It's not always going to be exactly the same linear kind of path to these trades happening. And it's not always going to be cascading trades, but you can find these inroads. And if you see them start happening, if you see multiple trades happening in close proximity, you might want to start looking at those teams' rosters and seeing what they're doing and seeing if you can maybe take advantage of what's, going on there. And yeah, it's kind of worth noticing, because last thing I'll say is once you notice it and once you start paying attention to it, I noticed it in the middle of me doing it, so I could take advantage of it, at least not let it negatively impact me during that, that day of trades. I'm like, oh, okay, multiple trades are happening. I'm like, all right, I see people are juiced. Let me see if I can get another trade that for me feels like I'm gaining something at some point, here down the road. And so that's how I was thinking about it. If you're more conscious of these things, I think you can affect them more. It's something that we mentioned last week when we were talking about the Dynasty physics. You realize momentum, you see momentum, you can actually impact it. Like in real life, if you notice something is moving, you can have an action on it, right? And it's the same thing here. And so, yeah, that's the last thing I'll say.
I like it. No coincidence that those trades on March 1st got done the day that the running backs were doing the underwear Olympics.
Oh boy, people got juiced for the
got juiced, man. Yeah.
Oh goodness! Wow. Okay. Wow. I think Uriah just uncovered the secret sauce to
the secret.
trading.
Just wait till Saturday on
late February, early
weekend.
March. Late February, early March. You can make it happen. Oh boy. Okay. That's not a bad. I'm gonna tell you what. That's a good one too. We've seen the cascading trades happen over and over again, so it's a real thing. But understanding the factors involved in them are probably more important than just the overall, right? Because it's like, why did this happen? Then you can actually replicate or have a better impact on it. And this is a great one. It's like, maybe pay attention on combine weekend and, start sending some late picks around and seeing if you can get some high valued assets.
I mean,
yeah,
it's good. Yeah, it's a good strategy. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, I'm happy to get into the tight ends. We'll have some more prospect profiles next week. Maybe we will. I know I want to wait for Jake to be back. We'll see. I'll talk to Jake, but maybe we can get into the Knoll and the Royals, the Jalens.
We should do the Jalens.
We'll see what happens there. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. We'll talk about it. But last thing, appreciate everybody for joining. Join the Discord. If you are not in there, follow us on all the socials at Dynasty Underdog, and you can find our other ats in there. But that's it. Yeah, catch you guys next time.
Have a good night.
Peace out.